How you doing, everybody? Welcome, welcome. It's just honestly so good to have just like people together in one room again. This is awesome. But welcome to Brookline Booksmith for this very special event featuring, as you know, Steve Adelman, here to talk about his new book, Nocturnal Admissions. It's a favorite title among booksellers here at the store. My name is Adam, and I'm a bookseller here at Brookline Booksmith. I just want to first, before we get into the event, say thank you so much for coming tonight. Just like out here to support not only Steve, but an independent bookstore. We've been here in Coolidge Corner for 60 years as of last year, and that's because of the support of folks like you. So really, from the bottom of our hearts, like thank you for coming out and for buying books. Just please keep your phones on silent throughout the event. We really appreciate that. If you pre-ordered a copy of Steve's book, I've got them back at the desk over there. If you want to buy one or two or three, however many copies you want, you can also do that. And also, Steve will be definitely signing books at the end of the talk, so definitely be ready for that. So with that, we've all been so looking forward to tonight. It is such a pleasure and a privilege to have Steve here to talk about his book. So with that, turn things over to our guy Eli here.
Hey, thanks again. Thank you, Adam. Thank you, Brookline Booksmith.
So I wanted to say one thing first, and that is, you guys hear me?
Yep.
This may be a little unorthodox book event because the spirit of the book is that nightlife is spontaneous and creative. So I have not really planned anything with Eli, and I don't know what he's going to say, and it's going to be maybe a mess that we can pull off, maybe we can't, but that sort of makes sense for what the book is. So with that, I turn it over to Eli.
Great. Thanks, Steve. And again, thanks everyone for coming. I know half of you, more than half of you. That's awesome. Well, thanks for making it out. Hopefully some more people come in. Traffic, Red Sox, Coolidge Corner, fun. So a quick introduction about myself for those who don't know. My name is Eli Wilkie. I have been Boston native for 35 years before I moved out west, just like this man did. And I got my nightlife and club experience in the city all the way back in 1989, and mostly as a mosh pit guy and a skater, but eventually landed my way up into Avalon with the help of some other people here, and became a resident DJ there and a resident DJ at Avalon Hollywood, and which brings us to Steve, who basically made all of that possible for a lot of folks. So Steve, for those who don't know, I would call him entrepreneur, pioneer, club owner, club director, as he calls in his book, a babysitter at times, a multi-million-dollar deal broker.
Schmohawk.
What else could I say? Overall, and now he's an author. So with that, I have a copy of the book. I got it actually a little while ago, so I could read it, and I think it's fantastic. And it really starts to kind of put together perspective things in my life. And Steve and I don't think we really even spent a lot of time together. I met him maybe in 2001, and saw him a couple times here and there, and in LA. But for the most part, I think it's fantastic that he enabled nightlife, not just in this city, but around the world in some of the most amazing clubs. So I think, with that said, one of my first questions really was, when did you have the spark to actually get this kind of memoirs and your journey down?
Well, I've been a writer writing seriously for like 20 years, and I started writing scripts and essays and this and that, and then work takes over. So with the pandemic, I thought, I'm gonna try to get this book done. I had actually taken notes, and that's one of the things in the book is it's about taking observations, and so I take years and years of notes and notebooks. When I showed it to an agent I had, a writing agent I had about 10 years ago, excuse me, he said, this reads like, episode of Curb Your Enthusiasm on acid. That stuff is hilarious. You got to write a book about this. So the pandemic happens, and you get to some time to slow down, and really you get an opportunity to sort of be introspective about like what it's meant after all these years. And that's really, you know, I think the title and the subtitle is a little bit misleading because then the book is into the publishing world and they want to sell books and it's all the sensational stuff. You know, it's really about, you know, and the book starts out this way. The person who wrote the foreword highlights it, is that everyone's life story really has a nightlife story. It could be where you met your, I know, I just talked to, you know, Jeff, and he met his wife at Adelman and girlfriend, and said, there you go. So, but in different ways, shapes, and forms. I just happen to spend, you know, 100 times more time in this world than other people. So maybe I have 100 times more stories.
Yeah, and the book definitely reads like that. You know, obviously it's memoirs, and you know, another question you mentioned, you know, taking notes. Did you take those like almost kind of like people do journaling or you know, keeping a diary? How often were you writing some of these down?
Well, it started because when I came to New York, I had no idea what I was doing, and I said, I got to learn what, you know, the story is that I don't even know how I did this, but I had hired RuPaul to work at a club that I started working at in Boston. I'm thinking to myself, in today's world, how did I even hire her? Did I call her up on the phone and leave a voice message? Or call her, did she have an agent? I don't even know, but somehow she came and she went back to New York and said, this guy is great, unbelievable, and so she sort of, you know, built me up. This guy from New York was opening up the Roxy. He called me and said, oh, RuPaul says you're great, come down. I met him. He goes, you're hired on the spot. And I didn't know anything, literally nothing. And the reason he hired me because he thought that working in the club business, I had an economics, like a master's degree, and he thought that was so amazing. Oh my God. And that was not practically of any use either. So now I'm saying to myself, I've got to learn this business. So there's no, you know, you can't get a book and say running nightclubs for dummies, and there's no one to ask. You can't ask the guy that hired you, what am I supposed to do, right? You can't ask other people who you're competing with. You can't go to them and say, you know, you know, can you help me here? So I started taking notes, and those notes, that sort of process was hopefully humorously sort of brought out in the book, and those notes actually became the book. So that's why I have a pretty good memory of things that happened like 20 or 30 years ago, because I just wrote notes. And then it's funny because then I went over notes that I took that didn't make the book, and I'm thinking to myself, what was I thinking? One was like, fresh meat sign, is there any other option? Like I'm thinking to myself, what was, like I went through all these notes trying to put the book together, and then I thought, well, some of these won't work, but some of these will.
Yeah, and that's another thing I was going to ask is, I know I got this a while ago, I know some of you have just had it recently, and one of the things that strikes me is your attention to detail, like from 1989, like he's recalling exactly the pair of shoes that, you know, the person you were, met at the roller skating rink Roxy, like the bag that he had, like wore, like how many Diet Cokes this person had, and he's like, he went for his fifth. I'm like, fifth? Oh my God, was that embellished, or did you, like, were you in a moment there where you were like so intensely in this conversation that you were like observing how many Diet Cokes this person had?
Well, I'll tell you. Some things are memorable. You walk into, with Gregory here, who was in that scene in the book in there, right? And so you walk into you're going in New York, you don't know where you are, you walk up to a place that says Mendon Trucking, you walk in a black door, you turn around and there's a 10,000 square foot roller skating rink, and you're like, where'd that come from? And then some girl roller skates up to you and says, you know, hey, you should meet, and you don't forget that. It's not like And then the whole point about the bag was it was describing Gregory and what he was wearing and because he's a very impeccable sort of dressed guy, and I was Mr. Urban Outfitter just coming from Boston, so it stuck in my mind like someday I want to look like that guy.
Yeah, I just saw him come down the stairs actually. Yeah, it's like that's a well-dressed person right there.
Those things, certain things that seem like over time seem like kind of little details, those are some of the things that stick in your mind for certain reasons.
Yeah, and that's brings me to another question. I know that at least in my experience, you're always kind of behind the scenes and, focused doing your job, again, observing. But when the big event came, it wasn't something that you were out there kind of being this, big social person. You're mostly in the back office, above access. And, I've been there because of Lauren and working there and stuff. And, living that side of things, I think that your memory probably was better than outside and vibing with everybody else. Because I'm looking back, I had to actually, this book brought back my memories. I'm like, oh yeah, that happened and this happened, and I think it got a little clouded by maybe vodka or something like that.
Yeah, no, I go and I talk about when I grew up and the kind of place, a publisher gets their hands on this and calls it an improbable journey, right? And I always say it was like a probable journey, because I grew up in a small town, and the values and things that I learned helped me. We never really drank. I never really got that. And I'm not saying it's bad or everyone knows it, but I'm thinking to myself, well, I'm not really thirsty, and I don't. You're in the club and you're like, to be honest, the drinks at Adelman are terrible. I'm gonna order a whiskey sour, an iced down whiskey sour. I ain't drinking that.
You don't like vodka Red Bull?
Well, that came later.
Yeah, that's true.
When Red Bull came out, we were the first people to ever work with Red Bull in the country, and Red Bull was designed for young kids under 21 so they could dance all night. The vodka thing didn't come for another 10 years.
Yeah, it's kind of funny that became synonymous with nightlife, like vodka Red Bulls, and I think it is true. This was one of the first places it was had it ready. You go to some clubs, or bars, they're like, what? What is who? What? It's because it was 98. I was introduced to it, and it was a liquid bottle, if you remember, before it was, in this, foamy form, and it kind of would change nightlife, because now you have this two-headed monster that kept people dancing and silly.
And guess what? That's if I had any success, right? That really helped us in Avalon, in LA, because we are the only after-hours license, right? So we made our money from we were the only club that could stay open that late, right? So everybody came there, and then we could keep them going with vodka Red Bulls.
Yeah.
So vodka Red Bull has been very good to me over the years. even though I did drink Red Bull, but I gotta say one thing about the behind the scenes guy. It didn't really matter to me, but there are really funny stories about when I was thought I was being recognized. There's a story about me going into finally getting enough money in New York to eat at Bobby Flay's restaurant, Mesa Grill. So I go there, I go, oh my God, this is great. I sit down, and everyone is just tripping over themselves. I'm like, oh my God, see, this is, I made it in New York, right? Well, then the guy says, well, I loved your movie, and very few people get movies named after you. And I'm like, what is happening here, right? So I'm like, oh my God, this guy thinks I'm John Malkovich, right? So then I'm like, I don't think I should tell the guy, right? So I come back again, and then he goes, oh my God, Mr. Flay's not here to meet you, I'm so sorry. I must have been there 10 times, I don't think I ever figured it out. I think I just felt bad. I felt, at a certain point in time, I felt that's not right. But then if I said something to the maitre d', he'd be like, he'd lose his job because he just comped me for, the next 6 months.
You just let him down.
It was a catch-22.
He was just like, oh, and then you're like, oh, you don't like me that much?
So the story in the book goes, then, years later, I'm in LA, it's after it was after the Academy Awards, and everyone comes into town and they leave. So I was at the Chateau Marmont, I'm there, laying on the pool, I look by, it's Malkovich, just me and him together. And I'm like, am I that fat and bald? So I'm looking, and the whole time it's just me and him. So 4 days later, I'm checking out, there we are again. And he gives me this really, do I know you? And I said, no. I said, maybe you've seen me in New York. And I go, well, I don't know. He goes, let me tell you something. Have you ever eaten at the Mesa Grill? And he says, no. I said, I guarantee you if you go there, they're going to treat you really well.
It's nice to have a doppelganger.
Right.
I warmed it up for you, don't worry. I think something that, when you set out to write this, did you have anything in mind, again, because you're navigating an industry that doesn't have a cheat sheet or a pre-made framework for success, or even a barometer for success. So you had to invent it as you went along, and So, while I think this is great, it's your own story, and everyone has their own method through your observations and your relationships. But I'm reading it as someone who's also an entrepreneur and kind of actually getting into entertainment a little bit myself in LA.
Yeah.
I kind of reads as a little bit of a guide, and I know everyone's different, but some of the lessons you've kind of distilled them down into like valuable ways to think and categorize things. There's a lot of lists, but did you have part of that in mind to keep it something of it's not like how to succeed in entertainment, because there's no one path, obviously, but it kind of reads to me as that, and maybe it's just my own perception, but I'm just curious how that came out. That came to me.
That happened because first of all, the publishing industry, how many books have you read about nightlife that hadn't had to do with the murder of Michael Alec or none, right? Somehow the publishing industry thinks that people that go to anyone can go to a nightclub and have a day job. Somehow people that are involved in it don't read, so there's no sales there. So first thing is, you start writing a book. The first thing is tell me the list of all the celebrities in the book. I'm like, wait, I'm not writing that book. I don't know what you're talking about. So then the list was, okay, they're an entrepreneur. Let's put this in the bucket of, let's make this a successful entrepreneur book. And it's not that, because I don't know. The point of the book is, success to me, when all is said and done, these clubs are gone, and things last. What's left is people you've met, and this is the point of the book: stories that you can tell and share with friends. That's what's left in the end. So I'm not writing a book about here's how I did this and here's how I did that. But what happened was, Eli, is from those observations, I realized that I learned some really funny things from the nightlife world that if you're an entrepreneur in the 9 to 5 world, you don't learn. So I put them in the book. As when an incident happened, I sort of referred to what I thought of at the time and learned. So that's the connection between the two. So I thought, and then most of them I think are pretty funny. Some of them are, actually I marked a few here, and I call them laxioms. It's things that I learned that became to me just like law that you really had to do. So some of them are like, real business oriented. For example, one of my favorite ones, and this is what I learned from this guy. He says to me, here's one about my dad here. Let me see. So this is laxiom number 2. It says, be your own competition. Frequently when I was out at night, I'd see the same rival club owner at the bar chatting it up with a group of admirers. He seemed to be everywhere, except at his own club. When I asked him about this, he replied, I have people I trust who tell me what's going on there. If I'm going to stay ahead, I need to know what my competitors are doing, or more importantly, what they're thinking of doing. You'd be surprised what people will tell you if you buy them a drink. I get most of my best ideas by stealing when other clubs are planning. I thought that was interesting. And then there are different kinds of ones. This is Peter Gation, who was a big club owner I worked for. This one's called Never Let Them Hear You Pee. During meetings, Peter would, without warning, get out and go into the bathroom and start peeing without shutting the door, making his attendees wait as they listened to him relieve himself. This was so distracting and uncomfortable that to this day I flush the toilet while I'm going to avoid an extreme excitement. So you learn stuff all over the place. Wait, hold on, and then, they're all different ones. Like, and when I went to LA, Peter also gives me advice saying, why open up a small venue? Only open up venues that have like 2,500 people, because you bust your ass for the small ones more than the big ones. Don't limit yourself with capacity. If you're successful and you only hold 100 people, you're screwed. So when I went to LA, we started a celebrity club in LA, which was very successful. And I could never understand why, like, of all the places in the world, why didn't LA, weren't they inundated? Like, what? How did I figure this out? So what I learned from there, it's called Find the Hidden Need. Like the inventor of Post-its or Reese's Peanut Butter Cups, great entrepreneurial ideas zero in on what a community needs, which oftentimes they themselves aren't even aware of. To quote Henry Ford, if I had asked people what they wanted, they would have said faster horses. So these are the kind of things I picked up, and hopefully, people will, most of them I think were humorous, because I think the world in general is pretty funny. So.
Yeah, I mean, you came again very observational, and you approached it with that attitude too, which is a healthy way, an honest and curious way, an innocent way. But it ended up working for you because you're very much like completely observing all the time, less than being a participant in this entertainment that you enabled. You were like making it happen and able to kind of watch and talk to people and learn from their stories. And that's hard.
You know, I'm doing this for 30 years, right? So there could be people that go and they like, oh, I like to drink and party and that's fun and lifestyle. To me it was, okay, what's going on here? How can I figure this out? What can we do next? And putting that together, whether it's building a club, whatever it would be, it was always what, you know, it's like an architect in a way. You know, those guys live to be 90 years old because they're always trying to create things. So to me, the creating of things is really why I like it and why I still do it.
Yeah, and that's the thing, like, I think I took it for granted. I mean, growing up in Boston was a very lively scene in the 80s as well, you know, but it was very indie. There was all sorts of things. There was, you know, was it Venus de Milo?
That was just changed to Karma.
Karma and X Night.
That lasted forever. Yeah, that was there for like, you know,
and then
1800s, I think.
And like my mom and dad actually met at the Middle East, so there was always kind of this like really great scene going on in the city, like all over the place, and it was very indie and rock. And then, you know, you guys came on the scene, and I just remember my first time at Adelman, I was 21. Yeah, no, I was. So I just remember going there and just being like, this is next level. And, you know, if you could be in any part of this country and that was next level, it was one of the bigger things around with this vibe that I was like, this is so free and fun, and there's so much space, and I feel like there's all these different rooms and areas and people, and that's one of those things that I thought that was just normal. And then I went other places and like, oh no, this is something special that we have here.
And the story behind that is very interesting, because my background started at the Roxy, and the Roxy did these big theme decors. It was 2,500 people, mostly gay, just off the charts, and then a lot of celebrities and things. So I sort of grew up on that. It wasn't really DJ oriented; it was party oriented. In fact, Gregory and Candy, you know, they're here now. They created the branding, everything around the look. And I'm saying to myself, oh my God, these guys are brilliant. This is great. So that was step one, right? Step two was, okay, Twilo sort of came along in New York, and they started bringing in DJs and from out of the country, and that was the first time big sound had appeared in New York. I said, well, that's pretty interesting. You've got that. So I figured mixed crowd, this, that, and then right during that time I worked at the Tunnel, which was 5 or 6 different rooms, and they would have 7 or 8 different parties going on. So when I came to Boston, I said, okay, we got a room, and Avalon at the time, it was pretty funny. They had like suit and jacket on Saturday nights. It was pretty conservative. And I said, this is a perfect room, so let's get the sound and let's get someone to bring in decor. Let's get Gregory and Candy to do all the creative stuff. We brought the same decor person from the Roxy, and we started, and the sound was pretty good, and then we started booking a DJ, and the first 1 or 2 nights went okay. And then 2 really big things happened out of the blue. One is, and I thank him for it, was Giuliani. Because what Giuliani was doing is right at that time, he shut down New York, and all these DJs that were selling out in New York had nowhere to play. Oh, lucky me. So they came to Avalon. Then at the same time, John Lyons, right, was building the House of Blues, the Lights and Sound, going around the country. So he wasn't really, in a sense, dialed in. He came back to Boston and says, oh my God. So he started putting in this, sound was there. But what he added was, the first time ever in the country, was the lights and the moving truss and the production. So all those elements, and then a year later we expanded into the whole street. So there you got it. You can't beat that. But it was a culmination that probably took 10 years of things happening to build it, to get to that point.
Yeah, and I do like that concept too, because I've been to the Roxy and I've been to New York clubs, and some of them where it wasn't so much the DJ, it was the party. And then I've been to clubs where it was the DJ. And then again, mixing them both, having that experience, with the, all the decor, having dancers, we saw Barbie last night, like having that entire choreographed thing. That was kind of pretty unique to have both of those things at once, having Oakenfold on stage, having it snow tiny little bubbles. I remember that was like right after Christmas one year, and I just couldn't believe like what was happening. I was like candy cane lights going throughout the place, and I was like, this is to a Solar Stone song, which it was the first time I heard it, and I still play it. Like just
and you got
remarkable.
And that's kind of luck too, because you had to find people. It's all about the people. So we found a really great guy named John Della Rocco, and he put together Queenie and all these crazy people, and we may not have found them. I'm saying we got lucky, but it just sort of all came together, and there you go. So.
Yeah, it was a beautiful circus. I just remember there was all these, distinct clubs that you had that made up, Avalon. And then marrying them all together where you could freely go from place to place. It was a feel-good thing. Like you got a rush from it. I don't know how to explain it. Like you could go in and out of places, and you're in one place and another versus the singular experience. You could move around, and then, bringing that to Hollywood was actually something that, it's a big part of this, like bringing that to a city that also didn't have that, but had the potential.
Yeah, they people know dance music. If you go to, and it's big stuff right now. You go to these festivals, and there's a guy. Actually, this is going to be my second book. There's a guy standing there, and he's doing nothing. He's got now it's just a laptop that he doesn't even play off anything. Right? I'm just saying. He's on stage, and it's a big production. Obviously, I'm joking. I mean, there's very talented DJs, but it still is a guy on stage DJing, right? And they have all this huge, and 100,000, 150,000 people, and the guy's there. And here's where that started. When we started at Avalon, there was no DJ on stage doing like a rock star. There's guys like David Morales I would go to clubs in New York. I didn't even see him. I couldn't find him until I booked him 4 years later or something, and then I saw him. So one night at stage, someone came up with the idea. I don't know if it was me or someone said, Carl Cox was playing, and he was coming back. And the last time he played, everybody was cramming around him. And they all wanted to be around him, and they wanted to book tables. There was no table booking. Because let's try something. Let's put Carl Cox on the stage and put tables around him. All of a sudden, he's there on stage, and he's playing, and he's still Carl Cox. He's not going to do anything. There's no big lights and sound. Oakenfold's in town. He sees that, and he goes, "Oh, I see what this could be," right? He comes back a few months later. This is one of the third or fourth guys that played. He gets on stage. All of a sudden, he's standing there in the middle. He raises his arms. He starts jumping up and down. And there you go. Everyone's like, "Oh my God, that's amazing!" He was the first DJ to actually. He realized that for this stuff to grow and for the scene to grow, a DJ had to be thought of as a rock star, and it started right there.
Yeah, and if you don't mind me reading this, because I have a little story that goes with this one, because it's exactly that. Oakenfold live performance now consisted of various choreographed movements, the most effective being the Messiah. I've also heard it called like the Jesus pose,
Right.
And he was definitely the first to do it. I saw him do it in the late 90s, and then after him it was Armin van Buuren and Paul Van Dyke and these other guys. But here's the best part. "Let my people dance." With the turn of a switch, he would then turn the bass line and begin jumping up and down the beat. His disciples ate it up. So there was a party at Avalon where they opened up Lansdowne Street, closed it off. About 5,000 people, and it was Tiesto inside and then outside, and I was opening up for him inside. I was having a little bit of the Vakai thing, and Tiesto's on stage doing this thing, and I kind of was like somewhere in the back, and I kind of did it too. And then like his manager was like, "Who's this guy?" And Dave Ralph's like, "Oh no, that's Eli, who's the resident just played." He's like, "What's he doing?" He's like, "Just have fun." He's like, "He's fine." So later we're up in the green room, up in Access, and everyone's hanging out. Tiesto's in it. So hey, I just want to thank you so much. I've been playing your music since '97. He was in something. He's like, that's boring stuff, man. That's emotional old garbage. He's like, get with the times. I'm like, I just played a bunch of new music, and he just walked away. And he grabs up this, a bunch of food and snacks. He grabs a bag of Tostitos, and he drops it and just like drop kicks it and explodes because it's nice and packed all over him. Everyone just looks at him and he goes, Tiestitos, like that. And I was like, okay, you completely redeemed yourself. And it literally all dates back to like Oakenfold, like right, like that was his kind of like making a mark on this.
So, here's the interesting thing. This book really at its core is about, I live sort of a funny life, and I look at people in a certain way, in a humorous way. I tend to just see the world that way. And it really is a book about, be careful what you chase because the running better be worth it. And it's really, and in this nightlife world is a world, it could be the world of dairy, it could be the world of anything. You're bringing people into a world, and so, and I like to read this now, one of the things that's really important to me is, I talk about the indigo bunting, and that is one day I'm sitting in a doctor's office and I read a story about this guy who was obsessed with the perfect, he got to see this bird that nobody could find, right? So he goes, I got to find the indigo bunting. To him it was perfection. So I talk in the book, I open up in Avalon, Hollywood, and this is my night, this is going to be perfection. I didn't quite get there, something happened. Then I go into Avalon, Singapore. That was a total disaster, right? So for 30 years, you're searching for that. So, and here's how I end the book. So I say, give me a second. Okay. Two weeks later, let's see, 1 month. 1 month later, I was married to Michelle. On the 4th of July weekend in a small southwestern Michigan town of Three Oaks, Michigan, and Three Oaks, just miles from Lake Michigan. If any of those mistrusting spectators of 20 years ago at the Gation trial came across Michelle on Facebook, their theory regarding me being a confidential informant might have been may have been mistakenly confirmed. Holy shit, he was married to her. So I went to a trial and the prosecutor was named Michelle Adelman. So people thought somehow I was involved in trying to prosecute this guy. It had been more than 40 years since that first dance in a converted high school for the night gym. And now I was fortunate enough to experience my second first dance with my wife. The John Hughes types were now adult Judd Apatow types, and my early dreams of running away with Miss Sanderson had been fulfilled in a manner better than I could ever have imagined. Following long-standing nightlife traditions, our close friends and out-of-shape uncles and aunts used the celebration as a way to pass their out-of-sync dance moves to the next generation in a perspiration shower of awkward twisting and gyration. A Misty or a Mr. and Mrs. J, I tell stories about people and dancing in clubs. They were not, no matter how they saw themselves. However, the passing of the torch was rejected by the Gen Zers, the new social media savvy breed, who was able to discern their own dance future. As parents brought back the classic Elaine dance or Looking for My Keys, their kids doogied and twerked circles around them. To bridge the generational divide, Michelle's best friend, Becky, had organized a flash mob performance of Uptown Funk as part of the festivities. Taking the musical cue, 25 people of all generations took to the floor in what could best be described as a celebration of Smash All-Stars. I talked about a celebration of the Smash means 1 hour before every club closed. Everybody just goes crazy and starts dancing around like they're, well-planned breakdown improvised into celebration of the Smash All-Stars with the planned choreography breaking down into improvised solo routines by the end of the song. Standing next to my best man, Gregory Holmes, I couldn't help but reflect back to when we first met. Since that time, I had been headhunted by two murderers, relied on advice from felons, and arrested myself, watched my Nana outdance an ex-NFL lineman, and then and then mistake her for Danny DeVito. I've been drunkenly taken for Sherlock Holmes, chased by a rock icon, ghost hunted, and hit by a projectile cheeseburger. I've launched musical movements, butted heads with Jerry Falwell, served as an equal opportunity employer for little people, rang in the New Year's with Matt Damon's mother, leveraged a porn star, almost pancake Prince, and built the most lavish nightclub all in a day's work. This is the best planned wedding I've ever been to, said Michelle's impeccable friend Jeff. It's like a really cool club. Well, I did have the advantage of experience with such things, and although Michelle and the wedding planner had done most of the legwork, I was around enough to ensure that the music, lighting, ambience were just right. Looking around the room at the smiles of those who really mattered, I felt something gently land on my shoulder. It was the elusive indigo bunting had finally appeared. It didn't happen when, where, or how I expected, but as nightlife had taught me so well, that's not how life works. So that really, to me, is the whole sort of key to the book, and I'm hoping that when people read it, if they can get past the fact that nightclub people can't write, and nightclub people can't read, and nightclub people are sleazy, and I talk about and people treat nightclub people incredibly different around the world. I'm hoping that people will take it for what it is, and that is hopefully they'll like the reading, and they'll be able to get into that world, and hopefully have a lot of commonality with it, because I think not only people that work in the industry, but just people have their own stories that they could think of while they're reading the book. That's my hope.
Cool. Does anyone have any stories, any questions? I have too many to tell. You guys don't want to hear from me.
I have a question.
Sure.
I actually wrote I graduated from college many years ago, but I wrote my thesis on elite New York nightlife. So,
Oh my gosh.
yeah, it was fun.
that definitely didn't include me. So.
Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm fine. I'm a professional now.
Okay.
My parents, still mad at me for their credit card. But I was a women's studies major, and I met a friend who was all in the nightclub world, but it was all the bottle club stuff. There was a mix of, I feel like New York nightlife now, from what I was reading about, it is kind of void of the creativity and the community and vibrance that when you read about Limelight and Tunnel and Studio 54 and whatnot, how do you feel as someone who was part of when nightlife and the cool being, that environment was not about just money and being able to buy a table and being a hot girl and being, a promoter, what's your...
That's an interesting subject because I get asked that a lot, right? And the first thing is when I was in the I was 28 years old, right? So somehow now I've become a legendary nightclub director of these clubs, and I was anything but legendary, right? Believe me. In fact, I had this guy from the New York Post just doing an interview with me, and I kept telling the guy, just, what are you talking about? Who do you think I am? Oh my God, you're incredible. I said, no, I'm not. He goes, yes, you are. I said, you have no idea who you're talking to. So I said, look, I was very young, but what I learned from that, being around that in the 90s, was that it's all about the people. There was some really creative, clever, and just all the talented people that were involved in Boston. All the 90s were so wild. Okay. But, certain things come along. There were talented people back then who did creative things. And I think over time that's changed. There's a lot of kind of boring reasons why. It's trying to get the price of real estate in New York. It's the fact that a lot of the creativity has moved to festivals. And when Giuliani shut down New York in the 90s, more of a corporate mentality, like you said, where the bottle service thing is, and so it changed nightlife. There still are people doing it creatively, but the sort of light on the horizon is that I see that people are getting back to that, because in talking about the book, people are very much into bring creativity back into the clubs, and money can't buy soul, and nightlife is about that. So I see that people not having as much money, I see inflation and the debt people took on I think all that affecting it and bringing things back to hopefully that way, because that's what I sort of started with. But it was really the people and the talented people, and if talented people sort of get back in New York and start doing it again, I think it'll come back.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting thing too, because it'll never be that thing, but it will be something new. And we don't know what that is. You know, I'm still active in that scene. I go to these festivals. Some are done better than others. Some aren't as immersive. Like, you can tell the production value. The money's amazing. Like, you know, you go to these some of these like Insomniac events or things like that. You know, I've met Dave Ralph at some of these, and the production's out of control. You just feel like you're not. You feel like a tiny, you know, in a giant herd versus, you know, you felt special at some of these more like these New York, Boston, even though it's, you know, Avalon, LA. So I think there's something that can happen there. It's just it's probably on its way, but it might not look the same. You know,
You know, it's a cycle. People are going to go back to simple. Think about it, right? Just logical, simple, congregating, and they don't want to go and be told you can't sit here or spend for that. We just got out of a pandemic. So people just want to socialize and see people. Like at this event, this is how, you know, this is it. That's all they want. Now, that's going to take time to get there because the people that have the control of the real estate, they go back to what they know, which is doing exactly what they did before the pandemic. But I really see things changing and being, I think, a lot more funner.
Yeah.
We're trying to recreate that feeling tonight. We're doing this event. You know, it's kind of a hodgepodge of a bunch of old guys trying to get together, throw a party. But I think it'll be fun. I think it'll be a lot like that because that's going to be the focus. And we brought Danny Tenegula tonight to DJ because he's one of those guys that when he DJ'd, he was about bringing the dance floor to an experience of up and down your dancing, not a 2-hour set, being the Messiah, getting paid $1.2 million and having a radio hit and go, drop the mic and leave. That's fine too. It's not this.
yeah. And you know, like you said, you know, back in the day, I think you're talking about David Ralston. I've seen him play up in Stereo, Montreal. I was a resident up there, and that place was kind of the same fundamentals. Like, you don't see the DJ's not the focus. The focus is you, the dance floor, the sound, the vibe, and that's what's great about Danny. He's not a look at me kind of guy. He's not waving his hands around. He's like, you know, like John Digweed's similar. Their nose to the grindstone, and they're making you dance, and you pay attention to each other and kind of the vibe that you're having. And you know, we'll see what happens. Like, you know, it's kind of cool in California. There's all these really cool events that happen, and you know, it could be in the desert, it could be on a beach, it can be. Mexico has great things. They're in the jungle. There's lasers flying through the jungle, and you're dancing next to a tree, and there's like this monkey running around. And you're like, okay, this is truly incredible. And those are the things that kind of make me come alive again, and it brings me back to, like, you know, 20-something years ago when I first got those feelings.
And just the last thing, you know, that's kind of the book. Like, you know, those things where things are creative and fun. That's where the fun stories and memories come from.
I'm jealous of the ability to have had that.
Right. When you go into a sort of a corporate environment and stuff like that, I don't know if the same things come out of that for you as an experience.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, there's like a mix of them, right? There's like, I don't know, like the real bottle service ones, like meat packing. But then you had like Lebaron and some other ones that were a little bit more like cooler, but there still was that hot girl, sleazy dude. But I don't think it was that. Sorry, just the truth.
Yeah, and you know, even Miami kind of went. You know, you I think inspired, or you know, the Avalon concept was kind of replicated around the country. Miami, well, not that Canada's, it's called Canada America Junior. No, just kidding. But like, you know, Toronto and you know, Montreal were doing similar things too. And so you had, I wouldn't call it copycat. They're like, this is working in Boston and New York. Let's do that. Let's hire some of the same DJs that would play. And so you have these people going all up and down the East Coast, and then it kind of moves around the world. And I think you're in the right place at the right time too to bring those talented people together.
so I'll say one thing to conclude is that I really think, to me, in life, the one thing that helped me was, you know, I grew up in this sort of, I tell really funny stories about my grandma, and you know, she's this cute little woman who was, you know, wore these big hats and was about, you know, 4'8", et cetera, and how I grew up. But I didn't understand or see differences in people. So when I came to Boston, I would put people in drag or go-go people. I didn't care, and I didn't get it. Like, oh my God, you look great. It didn't matter, and that's what I think was that did not happen here. But my mentality was, I didn't see that. I don't care. is it gay night, straight night? I didn't understand what they were talking about. I didn't even understand the concept. I said, what do you want me to do? Like, check everybody's sexual orientation? Like, I don't care. What are you talking about? So I didn't get it. So, but I had that from when I was a kid growing up. And you know, my dad, I just didn't see, I don't see it. I still don't see it today. And then you look at all the divisiveness and you look in society, and I don't even understand it. Just doesn't, this goes right over my head, and you know.
Yeah, it was very inclusive. The whole thing, you know, Access especially, you know, they had, was it Monday night? Was the drag night there? It was just fantastic, and it was, you know, it carried through the whole place, and so there was always that, you always felt people were whoever they wanted to be there. There wasn't like it wasn't over conservative in a very kind of puritanical city, right? It was kind of a loose place to be.
I don't even understand the conversation. Oh, it was more. Okay, I don't get it. Oh my God, look at that mixed crowd. Well, I guess there's people that are from, I guess you could, I didn't, like, it just didn't, it was just people being people and who they were. And so I think I'm very, so again, you know, when I did this radio interview with my small, back where I grew up, and I said, it's a probable journey. Like, in, you know, the book publishing, oh my God, he's from a little town, it's improbable. I think it's a probable journey. Because what I learned from my parents over the years just, I think, really helped, and so I thank them, and I thank Eli, of course.
Thank you.
Not as much as my parents.
Jeff?
So you've been behind the scenes for so long, and you created all of this. Have you ever tried to DJ? And if so, how bad did it go?
That's a good question. I never have. There was a point in my life where I really got into dance music a lot, and I've been around a lot of producers and stuff. And I, honest to God, I thought they were really good at what they did, and I looked at them and saying, you know, it's kind of knowing what you know and what you don't know, and so I was happy what I was doing. I let them do what they did, but certainly I've been around a lot of people and a lot of talented DJs, and it's great. Of course, I'm joking when I say they stand there, and you know, that's just part of the. You know, humor is obviously the exaggeration of certain qualities, but there's a lot of talented people making music, and even more so now, when you know, DJs have changed to be, you know, with technology, they're able to put radio hits out, and that, you know, they get the money they deserve. They're rock stars. They go to Vegas, they get $1 million a night. God bless them. If they warrant that sort of payment, they draw that kind of crowd. I think it's fantastic.
Right?
You know, we talked about earlier too, like how, well, first of all, just to touch on like that inclusive crowd, right? Like, it didn't matter like who you were, like everybody kind of was just in the same room together, and just that love and respect for each other. And it's just, it doesn't have that same feeling today as it did, you know, years ago. And I think we talked about how some of these DJs now play these really small rooms, and the club's really packed, and it's just, there's no decor, there's no dancers, there's just, that experience is not there. But the bottle service is now the experience, or the tables are now the experience. It's like we've gotten away from the actual club experience. So it's
Because it's hard.
yeah.
It's elite.
It takes some work.
It takes work. Here's a flyer now. DJ, great. Don't again. DJ. Name any DJ. A nice portrait of him with a trendy background. Alessa. That's it. Look him. He shows up. That's not bad. It's just what it is, and people are doing, and they love it, and that's great. But it takes a lot of work. You have to socially orchestrate them. You have to reach out to different communities to pull them together. So it's a lot of work. You have to have people that are reaching out to this community, and it all comes together. It's just not, doesn't happen like that.
Yeah.
So it's just, people default to laziness.
Yeah. My first experience too was at Tunnel. Actually, was before I moved here. And then when I moved here, I remember like coming into Adelman, and then I was like, I want to work here, right? And then I met some of my greatest friends through that experience. In meeting a lot of famous people along the way, you know, through all the acts that would come in, and it just was a great time to just like to be a part of that experience before that actually had kind of died off, you know.
Yeah, one thing that I've noticed, and you know, I can't badmouth them because they're probably sponsoring a lot of things. But you know, a lot of things, and it's, you can't just blanket say capitalism, but you know, a lot of things got acquired, entertainment companies acquire, and so you do have these great venues, but you know, the bottom line becomes issue number one. And so yeah, the DJ's fees have gone what, like 2,000 times, literally like 2,000x what they were probably 28 years ago. And so to cover that, plus to cover all this other overhead, and you know, to get the most margin at the end of the day, things get cut, and a lot of that is, you know, the things that made it beautiful in the first place, the decor and all that. So you get this, you know, it's not a corporate experience per se, but it's built upon kind of these constructs of making sure that shareholders get kind of this thing. And I'm not bad mouthing, it's just the way it is. And I just recently saw someone posted one of the table receipts from table from EDC. It was just happened in Vegas a couple weeks ago, and it was $390,000. And I read it, and like each Red Bull was 75 each, the water was 100 each, and I was like, wow, okay. So again, if there's people that want to pay for that, that's okay too. But again, it affects the overall, the common man, you know, where you're just there and you're just a person in the crowd, so that's, I think that's something that happened. Maybe you've seen it, and it's, you know.
Yeah, and we'll end this, but I'll say one last thing. It's very simple. If you want to create something, you got to do the work.
Yeah.
You want nightlife to be what that was. It's not like the mystical time in the '90s. You got to just go out and do it.
Why?
I was Steve's assistant for a very long time, and I look forward to any copy he wrote for ads or radio, and so I'm really glad he wrote a book.
Thanks.
And I happen to feel that watching you do your job for so long, that you were able to pick the right people for the right place, and you brought together groups of people that, despite differences, were all there for the same reason, which was to be happy and entertained, and because of that, we grew and grew and grew these groups of people that are still together today. So that's the difference between
Gregory and Candy are good friends of mine. I'm just telling you, this is a perfect example. I met Greg in 1989. There's nobody like them in the country. I'm just saying, they're the best. So I'm saying, you know, they were from that era, and they're the best. I just don't know them, but I hope there's great talented people now that can, even going back to the sort of '90s thing, that can create it now. They just got to go out and do it. I'm sure there are a lot of talented people, but you know, you just gotta. It's the people that make all of this. You got to do the work, and there's no shortcuts. And you know, I think that's part of the book, too. Is that, you know, if you want to do something, just go for it, and you know, but you got to put the work in, because even, you know, in the nightclub where there's a lot of distraction, you can be sitting around drunk going, oh, hey. That's not going to get you anywhere.
So I know we're getting close to the end here. Does anyone else have anything here? I have one last question. Obviously, you've had a lot of notes and a lot of experiences, and probably a lot of things that your legal guardian, like your lawyer, or perhaps a publisher, or someone's like, or an NDA. Is there any story, maybe something, or maybe something that's not in here that you left off that is safe to tell here? Anyone here have a FBI or anything? Is there anything that maybe that's not on there, like maybe that you could share with us that didn't make the cut, but you know, maybe you could share with us right now?
Well, I'll say this, and that is, you know, if it was so, honest to God, it's not something that became part of my nightlife story, and so it's not something I really. If that were the case, I would remember it. It would be in my thing. It just didn't stick with me. So I'm sure there were thousands. And I didn't. It wasn't that you're holding them back because you oh my God, someone's going to come and, you know. It's just when you tell your story, you just tell it, and that's what comes out. Some odd things came out that I didn't think I was going to remember, and some things that were probably scandalous that, you know, publishers would love to have in the book. I think if someone would go and say, remember, I think I was talking to maybe Gregory, I mean, Greg, you were talking about the time when the feds raided your office to check whether there were any hidden drug messages in his invitations. That's pretty outrageous. Honestly, Gregory probably told me. I probably talked to Gregory about that 50 times. Years later, I don't remember it at all. Thanks, Eli.
Thank you, Steve.
All right, thanks.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you for coming.